Red in the morning, sailors take warning. Red at night, sailors delight. Well, sailors have had a lot to delight about across the lower 48 over the last couple of days, but how long will it last? I'll have all the details, plus a peek at the long range, today's trivia question, and a special edition of Cold Rain's Corner featuring this. So put down the newspaper, give the dog a milk bone, and buckle up. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Hi folks, and welcome back to the channel. You are here for another action-packed, information-filled, exciting edition of Cold Rain's Weather World. My name is Jason Pritchard, your host, your showrunner, your concierge, your grand facilitator, whatever you want to call it. I'm here to help you understand the weather, and we're going to take a look at quite a bit of weather today. We've got current weather, we've got upcoming weather, we've got a severe threat, a little bit of snow in the Northeast, and a sudden stratospheric warming. What in the world is that? Well, we're going to take a look at all of it here in just a few minutes. I'll have timestamps for all of these sections in the description of the video, so you can skip right to the point or the part that you want to skip to. But don't skip too much, because we've got some interesting segments today. We've got our trivia question, of course, and a special edition of Cold Rain's Weather. Well, this is Cold Rain's Weather World, a special edition of Cold Rain's Corner, where I get to talk about whatever I want to talk about. So if you want to hear that, stick around. It's going to be a little bit fun today. Anyways, glad you're here. If it's your first time here, please consider subscribing to the channel. You can hit the subscribe button, give a little like by hitting the thumbs up button. You can click the bell and turn on notifications so that you're able to be informed when we drop new episodes, which we do about every day. And leave a comment in the comment section. I want to pray for you if there's something going on in your life. So leave a prayer request. Happy to do that. Comment about the show, suggestion for the show, and happy to hear anything that you have to say. I'll respond to each and every comment. So thank you to all the people that have subscribed. We are over 120 subscribers. That's really great. We just started the channel. I just started this, maybe 2 weeks ago. So happy to see the response, and I really appreciate y'all doing that and watching the video every day. Certainly glad to have you here. And without further ado, we're going to pop over to today's trivia question. Today's trivia question is about hurricanes, and you may know the answer to this. I'm sure you've at least heard the term, but the question is, what is the name for a hurricane in the Northwest Pacific? Is it A, a cyclone, B, a typhoon, C, a typhoid, or D, both C and D? Anyway, let's see if you can figure out the answer. If you know it, type it in the comments. If not, wait till the end of the show and we will reveal it. So let's go ahead and get right into the weather, and we're going to start with our National Weather Service alerts page, and there's not a ton going on. Most of this is related here in the center of the country down to where you see this manila coloring here. All of this is related to winds and or fire warnings, and so these red flag warnings are up where you see this pink. That means don't burn anything outside. It's high wind, it's dry conditions, the fires can potentially spread, so try to avoid burning anything here. You got some wind advisories out for the essentially northern plains, heartland area into the Great Lakes, down to the Ohio Valley. And then you've got winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings through the northern Great Lakes into northern England, where a little bit of light snow or moderate snow is going to fall at times with this clipper that's moving through today and tonight. And so that's pretty much it. Some river flood warnings still in effect, little hydrological statements up here in northeast Montana. And so not a tremendous amount of activity weather-wise out there, but I wanted to show you that map just so you understand kind of what's going on. We look over here at our surface map. As you can see, this clipper that's up here in around Lake Superior, that's going to be moving over toward the north to the east and northeast eventually, and bring a band of snowfall through the Great Lakes and northeast. And so we can pick up a few inches of snow into the northern Great Lakes and in northern New England. That's going to happen there. Cold front's going to come in behind that. It's going to bring a shot of cold air out of Canada. We're not talking about Arctic invasion or polar vortex coming in, but over the course of the weekend into the eastern half of the country, particularly maybe from Tennessee, North Carolina on upward into the northeast, you're going to see a punch of cold through the weekend. It's going to be a little bit chillier than normal. Out west, fair weather. It's going to be warm. High pressure is completely in control over the essentially western half of the country. Looking at our satellite loop, we can roll this into motion here, and you can just see the high clouds associated or the cloud cover associated with that clipper. You see the little counterclockwise spin here over Lake Superior. That's going to be moving across New England. We've got some clouds pulling out over here, a couple of high clouds down in North Carolina, across southern Texas, and then coming in over the northern plains. So nothing too scary on the satellite picture. If we look at our radar image, same kind of deal here. Let's just pull this out, and I'll had this all queued up, but it resets on you if you don't get on the page soon enough. So nothing going on across most of the country except around the Great Lakes. And you can see up here in this area of snowfall. So we can kind of zoom in on this, see, drag it over. And you've got the snowfall here, and we'll put this into motion. You can see how it's kind of moving off. So snow rotating around this clipper system moving through. So you areas up here, Sault Ste. Marie, down into, into these toward Toronto, and then eventually over into Kingston and Montpelier and Augusta, and all of you guys up here in the northern part of New England. You're going to expect some snow as we go through the night and early morning tomorrow as that pulls out. Eventually it'll clear up. So that's what's going on the radar. So not a lot going on there. And then our current temperature map. So you can see again, milder for this time of year. You've got 30s across most of the Intermountain West, and then down here into the Southwest, 40s and 50s, 30s and 40s across the heartland, down to 50s, close to 60 as you get down here to the border, and then 20s and 30s across much of the Northeast, down the eastern seaboard into the 40s and 60s down to Florida. So chilly in some spots, but nothing too major for this time of year. We're looking at temperatures generally above average, except potentially over here where you've got snow about to fall in the Northeast. Now, we're going to take a look at that little clipper that's working through the Northeast, and we're looking at the NAM here. And if I put this on into motion, this is now out through essentially this afternoon. As you can see, we've got 9 p.m. this evening. We've got snow finally starting to work in with this little clipper system into New York, upstate New York, over into the up into Vermont, New Hampshire, and then on into Maine. It's a quick in and out sort of a system, and so it's not going to linger around. You're not going to get heavy snow amounts. We looked at the snowfall map yesterday, and it actually showed a couple of more inches of snow than it's actually showing today. So this system's tracking a little bit farther to the north. This is going to be moving through pretty quick. You can see the tight isobars here out on the coast, and they'll follow in behind this system. And so you're going to have some windy conditions as the snow moves through, as the clipper moves away. Snow showers, winds are going to spin around from the northwest. You may get a few bands of lake effect snow up here. So not a major event, just a nice little light snow event. And if we look at the total snowfall, we're looking at anywhere from 3 to 4 inches, maybe a little bit higher in the peaks of the Adirondacks, the Green Mountains, the White Mountains, and up here into northern Maine. So again, not a big deal, but that's how that's shaking up there. So that's going to be a nice little snowfall to watch it come down, but it's not going to, maybe some slick spots on the roads, of course, drive carefully, but not a big showstopper up in the Northeast. So that's our near-term weather roundup. Well, what about the next 7 days? What do we have in store? It's been a quiet period. Is it going to continue to be quiet, or are we going to see more of an active pattern? Well, we'll take a look here. So we'll start with our jet stream. And if you look at our jet stream in motion today, this is the analysis. This is where we are when the model ran. So this is the European ensemble mean. Again, that is a mean of 51 members that are all run and then averaged out. And so we start here. You can kind of see a split in the jet stream, northern branch up here, southern branch across the southern United States. Through the weekend, as we go into today, tomorrow, into really into Saturday, Sunday, not too much going on, but it's not until the end of the period on Monday. We get to see that little trough in the east. That's going to bring the shot of cooler air. North of these troughs are where the cooler areas, under these ridges is where it's a little bit warmer. But as we get into Monday, so we're looking at Sunday evening here. We get on into Monday morning. Look what happens as we get into a Monday evening. You start to see this area of low pressure develop. These streams kind of get together a little bit, and this area of low pressure develops across the Four Corners. We've been looking at that last couple of days. That's going to move off to the Great Lakes area as we get into Wednesday into Thursday, and it's going to drag a cold front through. That's going to create a severe threat across much of the South over the course of Tuesday, Wednesday into Thursday, and then it's going to be out of our hair. Moving that on forward the next little bit, just kind of quiet weather. This zonal flow, this flow from generally west southwest to east northeast, not going to create much in the way of storm system or activity out through day 7. So that takes us through Friday, March the 7th. So we'll get into the severe threat here in just a minute. Take a look at that. Surface map kind of bears out what I just said. Looking at this, not much. That clipper's rolling across the Great Lakes, some snow with that. And then that system starts to take shape as we get into Monday evening. So you can see it right here across Kansas starting to take shape here. This is the 6Z. Actually, this is the 0Z European model. I'm using this to just kind of illustrate the surface conditions here. So high pressure up here to the north, this low pressure starting to deepen. You can see the thunderstorms starting to break out across Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, up into Missouri and into Tennessee and Kentucky. And if we advance this on, we'll kind of run through this. 981 millibar low going up into the lakes. Cold front back here. You can see that comma head. Snow on the backside. Some of the models kind of waffling around how much snow there's going to be. The cold air is going to be there. So if we can get moisture to throw back into that cold air, we can see, 4, 5, 6 inches of snow up in places like Iowa, Wisconsin, and then into the Great Lakes. The low deepens out to 978 millibars. The storms swing across the south through the Carolinas. And then everything's out of our hair by 7 a.m. on Thursday, March the 6th. And so that's generally a look at the next 7 days. Little bit of activity coming into this, by day 7 into the northwest. Some light snow breaking out across the Rockies as another storm system begins to take shape. And there's some divergence on that with the model. So we'll look at that in a minute. And then looking at our 7-day total precipitation, again, on the European ensemble, I checked the GFS ensemble. They agree, so no reason to show both of those. In the coastal range out here in the west, the Olympics down to the Cascades, Sierra Nevadas, that's where you're going to see the bulk of the rain coming in. The active pattern is going to return over the next couple of weeks out here, and this is kind of the start of that. So you see a few inches of rain out here as those systems kind of come into California. They track west to east, and you can see that kind of higher footprint in this general area. And then as we get on into later in the period, we'll start to see some of those other storm systems take shape across the south. But this is through 7 days, and we're looking at generally 1 to 2 inches. As some of those thunderstorms, if they kind of train, you could get a little bit higher in spots. So we'll see, but that's generally a pretty good estimate. Snowfall totals, again, let's jump over to another solution here so we can display so we can see this better. So snow in the Intermountain West, Rockies into the Great Basin, into the Sierra Nevada range, and then up here in the Northeast over the Great Lakes into Canada mostly, and then you got a little bit of a light snow from that clipper. So over the next 7 days, not a lot of snow, and if we look at our probabilities of 1 inch or more, all of that's confined to those areas I showed you. So not really expecting a ton of snow across the United States. Winter is trying to wrap up. Spring is trying to come in and take hold. So long range has continues to kind of waffle around, and there's some signals with maybe a stratospheric warming event, which we'll take a look at in a minute, that winter may not quite be over for some areas of the country just yet, but it certainly feels like spring in a lot of the country right now and through the weekend. So we're going to take a look at that here in a minute and see how that shakes out. But first, we're going to look at our temperatures over the next few days. So we're going to go back to another display here and look at our temperatures. So this afternoon, highs across the 40s, 30s in the lakes, 20s and 30s in New England, but generally 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s as you get closer to the southern border down here. Very, very nice afternoon on tap today. Tomorrow, similar story. As I said, we're going to have a little bit of troughing into the east, so we're going to see cooler temperatures working through the weekend and essentially the eastern half of the country down the eastern seaboard. And then into Saturday, you can or Sunday rather, you can see that 50s to the south up to 20s and even some teens for highs in New England. So a quick cool shot in and out, and then rebounding as we get into Monday. That storm system starting to take shape and really suck in a bunch of warm, moist air from the south. And 40s behind, 30s still hanging on in the Great Lakes, 20s up in New England. And then Tuesday, warm across the south, chilly across the north, but nothing too out of the ordinary. A little bit probably above normal even for some of these areas, 30s and so on. And then back into the 20s and the heartland area toward the Great Lakes, 30s, 40s across the north, 50s and 60s, and up to 70s across the south. So not going to be any cold blasts that come in and linger for a long time. And so that's your temperature outlook. Generally speaking, um, normal to above for most areas of the nation. So now on to our main event. We're going to dive into the severe weather threat for next week. Now on social media, if you just peruse Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, and other areas of social media, Facebook, Instagram, you'll see lots of posts about an impending doomsday severe weather episode, event, outbreak, or whatever you want to call it. Well, the truth is, it's not going to be, it doesn't look right now that like it's going to be some sort of historic severe weather outbreak. There are some question marks about instability and timing and other things that we'll have to iron out as we get a little bit closer. In the meantime, we'll take a look at what we know. And what we know is that the Storm Prediction Center, who's very, very good at predicting severe weather and analyzing the conditions that lead to it, have issued their day 5 outlook. And they've got a big area here in the south, basically the central part of the deep south, of a 15% chance of severe weather. There's likely going to be severe weather in here, but they're not going to put an 80% chance because it's weather out 5 days out, things can change. But they've issued a 30% chance for a smaller area. That's pretty significant for them to do at such a long lead. What that means to us is that there's high confidence that in some sort of a severe weather event over the south. If we look at the day 6, this is, by the way, this is Tuesday into Wednesday of next week. If we look at day 6, Wednesday into Thursday, that threat moves over. We don't see that orange right now, but the threat moves over to the eastern seaboard from Tallahassee up to the Delmarva. So we're in through the Carolinas. So we're going to pay attention to this as we go on through the weekend. Now, this we looked at yesterday, and so this is sort of the point of where the cyclone initiates over here in the just in the lee of the Rockies. And so look at this. This is hour 90, so this is Monday evening, and we're starting to see this nice return flow of moisture out ahead of this. Remember, cyclones spin counterclockwise. So the flow around is this way, around this way. And so what do we see up here? Dry air. So what pulls in behind the storm? Dry air. What do we see down here? Moist air. So what pulls in behind the storm? Moist air. Look at that. And so you've got this big moist air feed flowing in out of the Gulf of cold rain down here. And that's going to set the stage to add fuel to whatever comes out of the Four Corners region. Now, if we bring this on forward, look at this. So we're going to put this on out just a little bit more. So by Tuesday afternoon, you're really seeing these dew points come in. These are dew points in the 50s, 60s, close to 70, where you see these dark greens. The higher the dew points, the more potential moisture, or the more moisture is in the air, the more potential fuel is for the thunderstorm. As the cyclone matures, look at this big kind of spin here. It really drags in this moisture around this, or this dry air around the circulation. Moisture's flowing up out ahead of it. It's kind of a neat signature. And so we'll bring that on through the Carolinas, moisture through the Carolinas. So the dew points surge ahead of the cold front. The cold front's back in here across the mountains. As we get on into Wednesday morning and through the afternoon, that pulls out through Wednesday night. Dry air filters in, cool air filters in behind the front, and everybody is calming down from whatever they saw on Tuesday and Wednesday. We looked at CAPE yesterday. CAPE is just a measure of instability, and we're going to pull this forward so you can see these blues start to come in. These values are around 300, somewhere in there, and as the lighter greens and yellows get higher and higher and higher values, more fuel for thunderstorms. Just think of it that way. So you can see this really explode as we get on into Tuesday morning and into Tuesday afternoon. And then watch what happens as we go on in through Tuesday night into Wednesday. What happens? It kind of breaks apart and dies down. Why is that? Well, as you could have some preceding rain or convection way out ahead of the front that could use up some of that instability, or probably in this case, more likely, is it's coming through at night. This is night. This is overnight, Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning, and heating comes down. It gets cooler at night. Thunderstorms need warm, moist air. Warm, moist air. The warmer, the moister, the more unstable it is, generally speaking. And so you see that start to wane as we get into the overnight hours. And then it ramps back up a little bit as we get into heating in terms of a Wednesday afternoon. And so we could see a little bit of a lull in through Tennessee. I don't want to let your guard down or anything, but as the instability wanes, you could see a little bit of a lull in thunderstorm activity or diminishment of the activity. That said, there are things that can compensate for that. And one of the elements that's going to be in play with this system is wind changing with height. It gets stronger as you go up in the atmosphere. That's speed shear. We talked about that yesterday. And then wind turning with height, directional shear. So out of the southwest, out of the west southwest, out of the west, out of the west northwest, and so on. And that is an ingredient that is needed for tornadoes, that spin. And so these thunderstorms come along, they suck all of this up, they stretch the spin, and generally you get rotation. We're not going to go too deep into all the physics behind that, but that's the general idea. And so some of those things can often can compensate for the lack of instability. So just keep that in mind. We'll watch all of these things as they come together. Everything's out of here again overnight Thursday. And then we also look at the low-level wind fields. If you got a weak low-level wind field, and this is about 5,000 feet off the ground here, these blues and these greens are kind of weak. These browns are strong. Watch what happens, though, as we go on into, this is Monday. We get on into Tuesday. Look at this. Boom. Man, what is all this? This is 70, 75 knots of wind up here at 5,000 feet off the ground. So if any thunderstorms are flowing through this, they're going to translate that down to the ground. You could have a wind event. So that's a pretty big jet at 850. It gets stronger for a time. It kind of wanes out over time and then re-strengthens again. But this is going to be a strong low pressure system that's going to bring in a lot of wind as it grows in strength. That's going to translate through the south and create a severe weather event. And so we're going to watch all of these things kind of come together, and we move it on out, and we're done. So we're going to go back over here and take a look at the surface map again. We saw this before. This is the 6Z European. So putting this out here in time, we're looking at Monday. Essentially, this is, I guess, Tuesday at midnight. And then we'll roll this forward. Look at that. Thunderstorms start to break out as we get into let's see where are we at here. So 15Z Tuesday, I think that's 10 a.m. And so look at this, 10 a.m. Tuesday, we're starting to see thunderstorms break out. And then 1 p.m., look at this. Big cluster of showers and thunderstorms. This low is really getting its act together. So approaching the Arklatex there, moving through Louisiana, Arkansas, up into Missouri. And that low is getting stronger and stronger. Wind fields are increasing. You're going through the afternoon, evening hours here, so you've got maximum instability. And then that line pulls together. Low gets down to like 977, I think. Look at that. Really strong winds around here. These tightly packed isobars. It's going to be really windy in this area here, even windy out ahead of this. So you're going to have background winds already. And if you get some thunderstorms, you're going to gust even higher. And so when you see tightly packed isobars, these are lines of equal pressure or lines of increasing pressure away from the storm. When they're packed that close, you got a big wind gradient, and you're going to get background winds already. So that storm system down here kind of weakens a little bit. You got a big snow event going on in Wisconsin here. And then moving it on forward, the line re-strengthens as it gets into the afternoon, and it starts to feel that afternoon heating. So look at that. Line coming through, there's a potential for supercellular activity as well with the changing wind direction with height. So all of those things are on the table, all the hazards. Strong thunderstorms, a lot of lightning, heavy rain. It's not going to be a flooding threat because it's going to move on through. Strong winds are definitely going to be probably the primary threat, and then a few tornadoes. And if the conditions are right, could have a few strong tornadoes. So all of these elements are kind of coming together to create a strong storm system that is going to threaten a large part of the South and maybe parts of the Mid-Atlantic too. So we'll watch that in the coming days, and that is your severe weather roundup for today. And last but not least here, I wanted to take a quick peek at the long range. We spent a lot of time covering other stuff, so we're not going to spend all day on this today. Not a lot of change. There's just some variability. Over the last couple of days, we watched the models kind of cool the long range down, warm it up, cool it back down. it's really a variable temperature pattern. I don't think any pattern's going to lock in for too long over the next couple of weeks or so. But if we look here at the total precipitation, one of the things that I mentioned to you was that storm systems are going to start coming back into the west as we get into next week. And you can see that reflected in the precipitation out here. So the coastal areas and the mountain ranges out here are going to pick up the lion's share in the taller peaks. But even in between, several more inches of rain could fall over the next 14, 15 days. Those storm systems, you can kind of see how they go here. So a lot of stuff, a lot of this activity is coming into California and Oregon here, moves across the center of the country. We kind of saw that jet, how the jet was kind of running southwest to northeast. So the flow is generally west to east in here. And so you've got this footprint of rain, and then it kind of blows up, and some conditions may make cyclogenesis possible over portions of the East Coast, and into the Tennessee Valley and so forth. And so you get higher precipitation totals in here. Some of this up to the north might be snow, but most of this is going to be rain because the temperature is just going to be too mild. And so that's your precipitation outlook. Temperature outlook, again, this is an anomaly map, average of 5 days. So you can kind of see how this plays out. Days 1 through 5, that takes us in through March the 5th. Days 2 through 6. So every time I advance this along, you see that average kind of for those for that next 5-day block of time. Mostly above average, except in the northeast. Same story, you start to get a little bit below down here where those systems are coming in. It's going to be cloudy and rainy. You're going to start to see the averages drop out there. Warm across the middle of the country into the east. A little troughing works back into the west here, and so you start to see some cooling, and that mutes out over time. And look, at this advance this along. Kind of warm in the central part of the country. If we did a total anomaly map, your center part of the country is probably going to be the warmest section, and then that sort of translates east over time. The model wants to put a trough in the west and a ridge in the east. How many times have we seen that? So that's just how it goes. But I think most of the nation is going to be at or above normal, with a skew above normal. Now, we talked about stratospheric warming earlier. So what is that? So way up high in the atmosphere above the pole, we're looking at, about 11 miles up. That's really, really high. That's out of our area of weather generation. So this is way up in the stratosphere. But what happens is you get this big wound up stratospheric polar vortex. It sort of sits, so it wants to sit over the pole. And when it's really strong, it sort of winds up, and you just have circulation around the pole. And it usually is coupled down to the troposphere. So that means it keeps our jet stream, the one that we show often on the show, it keeps it kind of fast moving into the north. And so when the stratospheric polar vortex is very strong, you tend to expect milder temperatures across much of the United States. So watch what happens here. It's kind of strong. Watch what happens as we go out in time. We're at day 7. Let's move this forward. Look at this. It starts to weaken a little bit. Those green colors start to fade out. And look what happens. It starts to stretch, right? So you're getting a stretching kind of thing. And if it splits, then you may be really in business here. And look what it does. Boom, it splits and becomes 2 pieces, and then continues to weaken out over time. Now, there are reasons why this happens that we're not going to get into today. But what generally happens is you've got warming that takes place and sort of impacts the circulation, and it weakens the circulation. It weakens the vortex. And when that happens, you can get a little bit more in the way of buckling of the jet stream. Instead of it being wound up, our jet stream, the one in the troposphere that drives our weather, it instead of it being wound up and fast and all the cold areas to the north, it starts to buckle, and you can get big dips and ridges, troughs and ridges in the jet stream, and start to bring in some of the colder air out of the Arctic into the United States. And in this time of year, when you do that, you have the potential for seeing some big storms and some pretty significant cold shots, maybe even some severe weather outbreaks and snow on the northern side of those. Now, not predicting anything with that, but let's watch it and see, because there are some signs that as we get late into March, there's usually a lag time here. So once this breaks down 15 days out, a couple of weeks out from that, we could start to see some active, even more intense weather and more intense cold shots for parts of the country. Now we get into April, those cold shots aren't the same as they are in January. Just keep that in mind. But that is your long-range weather outlook, and we'll talk more about that as we watch what happens over the course of the next 5 or 6 days or so. We'll see, have a better idea if this is going to happen or not. But it looks like it is. On Cold Rain's Weather World, we generally have a fun little segment at the end of the show. There are different things that we do, but today we're doing one called Cold Rain's Corner. Cold Rain's Corner is a segment that I pull out from time to time when something's on my mind that I want to share with you. And I have something on my mind today that is not weather related. And what is it? Well, it's this. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, when taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current where it serves, or lose our ventures. Old Billy Shakespeare knew how to write it down, didn't he? That comes from Julius Caesar, and Brutus is talking to Caesar. And you might say, well, what does that mean? Why does that matter at all to anything? Well, it matters because we have a limited time on this earth. Whether you believe in God like I do, or whether you don't believe in God, you still have a limited time. You have a finite existence. And all too often, particularly today, we see it all day, every day. Life just bombards us with stuff from every direction. Some people can't get off their phone. Some people have so much work they can't stay afloat. Some people have home obligations. Some people are just going here and there and doing social activities and not giving any thought to anything else. Well, I want to encourage you to slow down a little bit, put your phone down, spend some time thinking, spend some time talking, and spend some time just really considering what you want to do with your life. Because I'm saying this not to admonish you or talk to you in a pejorative way at all. I'm saying this with a full heart and just to encourage you. I've thought about a lot of this over the course of the last 10 or 20 years of my life, and I have done very little about it. And I regret that to some degree. So I've taken the opportunity to start this channel and to build a community around ideas that maybe I have that are somewhat unique in the weather world, and to bring a little fun. And oftentimes my issue is that I can't get started. The things that I want to do maybe seem too hard or out of reach. Like with this, for example, I've had to learn new software, learn how to understand AI, learn how to use recording tools and editing tools, and create a YouTube channel and all of this stuff. It's really hard to do that if you don't have that skill or that background like so many young people do today. But I thought to myself, I don't have an eternity of human existence. And so I want to do this. And so why not take the opportunity to do it? And that's what Brutus is saying to Julius Caesar, is you have an opportunity, you have a tide that rolls in. It's not going to stay there forever. You're going to either get on it and go with the tide, or you're going to watch it go away and regret the decision. And you may not have very many of those tides. So I want to encourage you to take the current where it serves, because we are afloat on this sea that we call life, and there are plenty of opportunities for us. Just open your eyes, have courage, take heart. You can do it. And sometimes it's just best to jump in and do it. Carpe diem. So you didn't know you were going to learn Latin today, did you? You probably heard that, and you probably already know it. But that means seize the day. So seize the day. And that is Cold Rain's Corner. And that brings us to our trivia question. The answer to our trivia question. What was our question? What is the name for a hurricane in the Northwest Pacific? Is it a cyclone, a typhoon, a typhoid, or both C and D? Well, if you answered D, both C and D, that was not very bright. So the answer is, as you know, a typhoon. And so the typhoon, it comes from a root that is based, the word comes from not an actual root, but it comes from, the word is a root that is based in Urdu and Hindi, which actually may in turn be derived from an even older Chinese word called taifeng, which means great wind. So as promised, we're going to go ahead and get into our Jet Dynamics 101. Well, I guess that means we're out of time. So with that, this is Cold Rain reminding you, if you didn't like the weather you saw today, there's a better model out there for you to go find. It's your job to go get it. I showed you the stratospheric model today, so maybe there's something out there you like better than that. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. I won't talk to you tomorrow because I'm going to be traveling, but maybe Sunday evening I'll have another quick video out. We'll look at that severe threat probably exclusively and then back to it on Monday. Take care. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye.